Um, Welcome back, everyone, for our third meeting. Today is a portfolio workshop, and we'll just be giving general portfolio tips and sharing our resources that we found in the journey of creating portfolios to be helpful. And at the end, we'll be able to have a live feedback session from our guest speaker today, which we'll be able to go into depth about. And yeah. So for our agenda today, like I said, we're just going to be giving a basic portfolio intro. So this is kind of like walking through the steps of actually creating your portfolio. And then we'll have our guest speaker, Yvette from Google here, who will go over actually a few submitted portfolio examples to talk about giving a live feedback session. And then at the end, as always, we'll open up the floor if you guys want to stay afterwards in the meeting and come discuss any questions generally about the club, about UX, or get feedback on any projects that you might be working on. Okay, so first, what is a portfolio and why do I need it? So depending on kind of like your skill set in UX, you might be at varying levels in the stage that you're at, whether it might be already you have a portfolio and you're looking to get feedback, or you've been hearing this word thrown around a lot, but you're asking kind of like, what is a portfolio and why do I even need that? So a portfolio, essentially, it'll look like an interactive website where viewers can just come and interact with some of your best works. This is required and standard actually in a lot of design careers. So you might see this if you're applying for like a UX or UI role, a product design role, or any other like role that might include design. I've also seen people in CS also have portfolios, and it's really just a way for you to showcase any projects that you want to highlight and talk about your relevant skills and abilities kind of beyond your resume. It's almost like an interactive resume, and it gives you a lot more space to talk about some of these more meaningful projects that you might work on. It also is a great way to keep track of your journey and accomplishments.
Okay, cool. So I'll be talking, kind of going through the stages of building a portfolio, and it's honestly kind of like a process for building a case study, but it's not like a strict process or something you have to follow. It's just like a guide there that can help you if you're like starting to work on it or if you're currently working on it. Next slide. So for the first step, you would want to just understand who is going to see your portfolio. So for most of you, it's going to be like hiring managers and recruiters, because you likely need to show and like not just tell about your skills and expertise in UX. And then these people, they have like a lot of just applications they got to go through. So they're busy people. And so you want to keep like this in mind when you design your portfolio. Next slide. So now the next step is just really understanding more about this audience and like maybe the functionalities of your portfolio. So going back to kind of like the recruiters and hiring managers, you just want to make sure your website, their portfolio is like easy for them to go through and like find your work and resume, and like making sure your case study is easy to skim by using like a label, a header, and a paragraph with like no more than 3 sentences for each of those paragraphs, and a visual at the bottom just to make it easier for them to skim and like get the gist of what your case study is about. So it's kind of like a newspaper article where you see like the headline, and then from there you should be able to like kind of get the gist of what it's about. So this example here is like a screenshot from my portfolio, but I use like a label like the problem, and then I would like call it the header, like Procreate beginners struggle to create artwork efficiently, and then following that would be like a paragraph, and then a visual would be like the very bottom of that. Next slide. And then from there, you want to do some research kind of into like looking into the jobs that you want a company, or even like the sector you want to work for. So this can like help you just decide which projects you should include. So for example, if you want to work with maybe more AR, VR projects, then you want to show like maybe something like that that just demonstrates your skill in that area. Or if you want to work for, I guess, like Uber or Lyft, you can show like some like mobile design projects, because their products are like on like apps, mobile apps and devices, not on the computer. So in general, it's just like good to look at other people's portfolio out there to get an idea of like what there should be on it. Like maybe go on Behance or Cofolios, UX folios, like just stalk around, honestly. And then next slide. Once you kind of have like an idea of what you like, where you might want to work, you just start just choosing your projects and like putting like your best one at the top, and like just collecting all the stuff and content for your case studies, like your research findings or ideation process, design, like design goals, all that stuff. And I would try to aim for quality over quantity, just because I've heard that, you know, portfolio is only as good as your worst project. So just put your best ones on your portfolio. And then next step, this is just basically, you're actually starting to write the content of your case study, creating it. And this is the design process that I usually follow, but it kind of really differs project to project. I wouldn't follow it like strictly, but it's important to not really put everything you did in your portfolio, like maybe for examples like persona, empathy map, just because like I would like recommend just choosing like the highlights of each project and only add stuff that really shows your design thinking and like how it affects the outcome. So like in the past, I used to put like everything I did in my case study, and it was kind of a mess because when I look back at it, it was just like, it felt disconnected. I'm like, why did I put that in there? Like, it doesn't make any sense. So it didn't flow with the rest of like the story. So I also want to mention, like, you do want to like try to tell your case study more like a story. And like by that, I don't mean literally writing a whole chapter of a book. It's just like writing, connecting each step of the process like seamlessly from like one to the other, not like, oh, I did this and then I did that and then I did that. So for example, this is like, I wanted to briefly say an example from my case study. So Procreate like does a good job of providing really good art tools for artists, but a lot of beginners of the app are having a really hard time using the platform to draw like more efficiently. And why is this important to even solve? So like if beginners are feeling more frustrated, then they might like start to drop off and use like another like platform. And on the business end, this is really bad because then it's like a decrease in user retention. Not enough people are using their products or even buying it. So like to understand why people are having a hard time using this app to draw more efficiently, I interviewed some people and found that XYZ. And so you would continue on, but like this is just kind of an example of like how one step leads to another instead of like, oh, here's a problem statement and then here's my research and findings. But I'll have Yvette, our guest speaker, go into more like about this storytelling journey. So yeah. Next step, this part is basically just like about the design and branding of your portfolio. So like, what do you want your portfolio to say about you? And like, what kind of designer are you? Because like, I would be like specific about like that instead of avoiding and like not use terms like, oh, multidisciplinary or like empathetic, because those are like, they don't say much about who you are, like, and they're really often like overused. So I might as well just say it like, what kind of designer are you? Do you like focus on like design systems? Just don't say like, oh, I'm multidisciplinary. It doesn't really say much, but yeah. And then for the about page, this is where you get creative and express more of like who you are. So I would go into like how you got into design, try to connect your background and your identities to that, and like what are your values? Because if a recruiter is like looking at all of these applicants and they're like all relatively similar in terms of skills, then your about page can really set you apart. So like honestly, go crazy with it, make it personal or memorable, just like have fun. So just here's an example of mine. I just, in this GIF, I try to make it like personal to me by tying like 3 main identities I had growing up and back to like why I design. I'm kind of a wordy person, but I think it does the job. And then lastly, I think you can like also just show a bit of your interest as well by like just showing projects that relate to them, like your interests. Like maybe if you like environment and like nature sustainability, you can like show some like project or side project related to that on your portfolio somewhere. And I think that's it. Yeah, next slide. Your portfolio, yeah, is never really done. So I would like honestly constantly update it as you go along your career and just ask around from designers and update it, because that's how you will always improve. But I think, yeah, that's kind of it. Are there any questions? But if you have any, just type them in the chat. I think I will hand it over to our guest speaker, Yvette, now. Okay. Let me just a second. No worries.
Are you able to share your screen?
Yes, just figure it out.
Cool.
Can everyone see my slide?
Yep.
Great. So yeah, I can start with a little bit introduction about myself. First of all, thank you so much for having me. And a little bit about myself. I have a background in computer science. Then I got my master's degree at UW in human computer interaction and design. And now I'm an interaction designer. I'm currently living in Seattle and I have 2 cats. My favorite food is boba milk tea and the Blue Star donut from Portland. And right now I'm working at Google, focused on first-party and third-party integration on Gmail and Google Chat. So for example, like chatbot and also Gmail add-ons. So yeah, and today, I want to share a little bit about my personal journey and what I learned from my personal job hunting process. I believe a lot of people, myself included, have asked about this question. What is a good portfolio? Is there like a certain portfolio framework that I can use to get into my dream company? I have done a lot of research. I have looked through other designers from different company. And from what I could tell when I was a student looking for a job, the answer is no. I saw that the portfolios of people who get into big companies and cool startups came in all shapes and sizes with no obvious pattern or framework. I think the reason behind it is pretty obvious. It's because each candidate is different and also each position is also unique. So that's why the portfolio should really be about your own story to showcase who you are. So your story is first should about you. So you want to tell people about who you are. And I think in a previous presentation, our faculty also mentioned a little bit about this as well. So you want to tell about people, what is your role and what is your background and interests. So for example, me personally is a designer with a computer science background, and I am passionate about data visualization. So I think your portfolio is not only about UX design skill, it is also important to include your unique skills and what makes you stand out from other candidates. So I remember when I interviewed with my second company, Oracle, I really focused on mentioning about my background in computer science, my past working experience on data visualization projects, and that skills really match with what Oracle is working on, and they're working on super technical enterprise products. And I feel like that's one of the reasons why I got hired. So the next part is about story. You want to tell about like, what is your experience? Who are you working with? Are you a good team player? How do you deal with conflict? What is your design process and how did you solve the design problems? And of course, what is the impact? And since we are talking about the story, so next let's break down the story. So here I'm going to use one of my favorite illustration about storytelling from this book, The User's Journey Story Mapping Projects That People Love. So I mapped the step of a typical UX design journey onto this illustration. So usually you start with discovering the problem, you do some research, and you came up with some like early design explorations, and you do usability testing and you collect some user feedback. And a lot of time, the user feedback is not great. This is why you have iterations. And finally, you came up with the final design solutions, and you have your impact. To me, design explorations, user feedback, and the iterations, we call it the design process, make up the peak of the story. And they're actually the most important part. So you want to explain your design thinking process to your audience in detail. For example, like how do you solve the problem by iterating? What kind of challenges have you met? That's basically where and how the interviewers learn about your design skills, as well as your collaboration style and experience working in a team. So for me, I dedicate at least 50% of the content to the design process. The other question people ask me a lot is, can I put my student projects? What if the project is not launched? What if I'm not satisfied with my design solutions? Can I still put those projects on my portfolio? And I feel like it really could be any story, as long as it is interesting, it shows who you are, it's something that you are proud of, that you learned something. I mean, of course, it is great that you have something that is successful, that's something you can show the big impact. But I feel like for most of the students, it's really, really hard to actually have something that has a lot of impact or something that have launched. So while I was as a student, while I was working on my portfolio, I really don't have any projects that has been launched. But I was still being able to use storytelling and tell about the interviewers about how do I make certain design solutions and how did I came up with the design decisions, how do I collaborate with people. So it doesn't really matter if the projects has a lot of impact or not. It's really about the story. So as long as the story, the experience and the process is great, and you feel like you learn a lot from it, then it can be a great portfolio piece. The next thing is your portfolio is one of your portfolio pieces. Actually, your portfolio is not only one of your portfolio pieces, it is actually the first project in your portfolio. So you want to treat your portfolio as like a UX project. Think about the user experience of your portfolio. I think we also mentioned a little bit in the previous section. So who are the users? Users can be actually anyone, not only the recruiters, hiring managers. It could be the peer designers, researchers, software engineers, PMs on the team. Basically anyone who wants to learn more about you. So it is really important that you want to make sure your portfolio is accessible to any people who will look at your portfolio. The next part is experience. You want to think about, for example, is there like a responsive design? Is the mobile design looks good? Is that something people, like if you have any like animations or like Figma link, does that works on the mobile as well? Because to me, I feel like a lot of time people actually use mobile to open your portfolio first, then they will switch it to desktop. So especially if you want to work for like consumer facing products, like mobile design is definitely something that is super important. The next thing is about information architecture, like navigations. Think about, is it easy to switch back to the previous project? Is it easy to switch between tabs, like home tab, resume, projects? And the next thing is accessibility. So here when I talk about accessibility, it's not really about anything fancy like voice control or like keyboard control. You can start with basic things. For example, does the picture is like clear enough to read? Is the font big enough? Am I using the right color contrast? Because I have actually seen people using super tiny font. And even for me, it's like super, super hard to read. Then imagine for people who actually have like vision impairment or who is using their mobile or who is like like a car or something. So consider those experience as well, which will really help you to build like a great portfolio experience. And last, I want to cover a little bit about portfolio presentation. So I think we mentioned a little bit about portfolio website, but here I want to introduce a little bit about portfolio presentation. Portfolio presentation usually happen either before the onsite or it's during the onsite. So it's a 45 minutes presentation that you are going to have like this video presentation with the entire team. Sometimes it's just with the hiring manager, sometimes it's with hiring manager and also researchers or like PMs or like designers. So the difference between portfolio presentation and your portfolio website is usually people won't spend a lot of time on your portfolio website. I would say just like only 5 to 10 minutes. They will go over like the first 2 projects. But for portfolio presentation, since you're spending 45 minutes, so it's really important for you to think about how you should spend your time and how should you present your projects. So here are a couple of tips. I feel like, I personally feel like it's really helpful for me when I prepare for my remote portfolio presentation. the reason why I mentioned remote here is because right now I believe most of the interview are still like conducting remote. So the first tip is less is more. So I have seen people who have included 5 projects in their 45 portfolio presentation, and this is definitely too much. I would suggest only include 2 to 3 projects. So for me, I only put 2 projects. One is like a big project, covers the end-to-end design process of one of the project I worked in the past. The other one is something that I have collaborated with other people, like the visual designer is a design system project, which showcases my other design skill, which is the UI visual design skills. So you want to make sure you have 2 projects and it showcases you different design skills. And the other thing about less is more is that's about portfolio website, people can take their time to read all the content, to enlarge on your journey map and read the details. However, for presentation, it's really hard for the audience to listen to you and read at the same time. So that's why you want to like basically put less content on your portfolio presentation. Instead of like put like a large chunk of the text, you want to only show maybe like the titles, the highlight some part of the journey map, like enlarge the pictures to help audience like read the details while they're listening to you. Then the next thing is engage with your audience. So your audience are human, and human has really, really short attention span. I'm not sure about you, but when I'm having meeting, I usually will just switch to another tab and working on other stuff. And I feel like this is actually happened a lot during like a portfolio presentation. So when I found out like my audience is lose interest or like they're like not really paying attention, what I did is ask some questions. So basically engage them back to the conversation, be like, hey, is this product something that you have used before? Do you think my design solution solve the problems? So basically, don't think portfolio presentation is just like a one-way thing. It's actually a two-way conversation. So like definitely try to engage your audience and bring them back to your content. The next thing is practice your facial expressions. That's also something I'm currently trying to work on. I think it's really, really hard, especially during like remote setting. It's really hard for you to actually control your face expressions. Like people always looks nervous. But during the presentation, you really want to show your good side. You want to show people, hey, I'm a really nice person. I'm like an easy person that you can work with. And you don't want yourself to look super nervous. So I think that's something you can spend a little bit time to practice. The next thing is communicate, don't read. So I think it's happened a lot during remote portfolio presentation because it's remote, so you have a lot of like presenter notes and you're like, oh, I can just like read what I have, but actually it's super easy for people to tell if you're read or not. Especially as I already mentioned, portfolio presentation should be like a two-way communication. So even you want to read your presenter now, definitely practice and make sure like you notes naturally, you speak naturally, and you engage your audience, ask questions and answer their questions out as well. So that's what really helps you to build that relationship with the team before you have the one-on-one interview with them. The last one, which I feel like is the most important one, which is practice makes perfect. So before I interview with Google, I practice my portfolio at least 50 times with different people, my friends, designers from different companies, my families. The good thing about practicing is you can receive a lot of great feedback, especially people who from different background. Like I practice the portfolio with my friends who is a software engineer, and I can get his perspective on my portfolio, and The main reason is I want to see whether like a person who without UX design background can understand my portfolio. So I feel like this is super important, that you actually can receive all kind of feedback and basically iterate on those feedback and make your portfolio better. So yeah, I think that's all the presentation content. Any questions before I move to the next section?
So I actually have a question. Because you mentioned earlier in the slides that building a portfolio is sharing your own story and experiences. So for me, so for people who are coming from another background, can they like incorporate or include their work from another field in their portfolio? Let's say this person was an animation designer or motion graphic designer. Can they incorporate those work in their portfolio?
My answer is yes. So in my portfolio, I won't recommend you to put something is not related to UX on the top 3 projects. But I feel like if there's like other space in portfolio, you can definitely include them as like the 4th or 5th project. I can't guarantee everyone will read it, but if someone who actually want to learn about your background before you become a UX designer, they could still check your projects. So for me, I did include all my coding projects and my projects on data visualizations. And I feel like that's actually super helpful because while I was talking about my background, I could just be like, oh, you can feel free to check my projects on data visualizations to learn about my previous works. And I actually receive a lot of great feedback because people generally are curious about what you have done in the past and your journey about how you become a UX designer. So those content actually helps them to learn more about you.
Got it. Yeah. Thank you.
I have a question too. So let's say you're writing about an interview that you did as part of the user research process. So would you recommend like formulating the information as a paragraph or as a set of bullet points? So it's like faster to skim.
I would say the bullet point. Again, the other thing I want to be clear is portfolio, like UX designer and the UX researcher's portfolio is different. So all I talk about is really about UX designers' portfolio. And from my previous experience, maybe I'm wrong, but I have heard a lot of like designers or like interviewers from company be like, we care about research, but we care more about the design solutions. So typically we don't really care about how you conduct the research because you are interviewing like a designer position. It's not like a researcher position. So just give me the bullet point. Just basically tell me why you make like a design decision based on those bullet points. Instead, give me like a long paragraph or like detailed process on how you're conducting a research.
Thank you.
So next, I think I can start to the next section. So I'm going to give feedback to 2 of the volunteers who submit their portfolio. So let me share the screen. Oh. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one is from Wen. Are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Is there like a specific project you want me to go through?
Yeah, could you please go through the form-1?
Okay.
I think that's the first project people will see. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. So first of all, thank you so much for volunteering to show your project. I think it's definitely take a lot of like courage to show you projects in front of other people. So thank you for doing this.
No problem.
And I want to say, like just from like the first impression, I feel like your portfolio is really clear, and I don't think like major big issues. And I really like this color, and I think you make super clear about what is this project about. Like those tags also are really helpful for me to know about this project. And I like how you also show the UI of the project, so I know this is like a mobile app, and this is something about food, although I haven't really looked at your project. So I think that's something, it's great. So digging into a project, to me, the first thing I notice is there's a lot of text.
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely something could be improved a little bit. So for example, maybe add more visuals, or maybe make this UI image a little bit bigger. But right now, like I'm like, oh, there's a lot of text. And after I clean through this, I'm like, okay, and you have the overview, you have your role, you have your contribution responsibility, which is great. And here you have the problem as well. So I guess I would like to highlight the problem statement a little bit bigger, because right now it's a little bit hard for me to see what is exactly the problem. And then it's the ideation. Again, this is definitely too much text. I think it's fine that you have a lot of text, but you want to highlight something that you want people to see. For example, I saw you highlight, like you bold this thing a little bit, but I still want to, like, for example, like design requirements. For me, I will highlight, for example, easily through mobile phones, or like something like distribute the food to locations. So basically those things that you feel like are the most important things, because when I'm like reading, I won't actually spend a lot of, like, I won't really like read all the stuff if I'm like a really busy hiring manager. Imagine I received 300 applications and I'm reading every portfolio, right?
Yeah.
And again, it's about the personas. A lot of text to me. I feel like persona is great, but I feel like I'm not like I'm not like a big fan about those kind of personas, because I feel like it still takes me 3 minutes in order to understand your user. So what will be really helpful is you basically summarize the persona a little bit for me, so that I only need to spend 30 seconds on this and be like, oh, I understand your user. Your user is this type of person, and she wants to solve this problems, and this is her current experience. So I think you could like summarize this thing a little bit, and basically maybe turn it into something shorter, like clear, like more clear, and also like maybe highlight the most important thing as well.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
So when you say like summarize the personas, do you mean like I redesign these personas and like make summaries, or below each persona I write a summary?
I would say summarize the whole thing, to be honest.
Okay.
Do you really care about if this person living in Linwood or Seattle?
No, like I've also heard about the personality and motivation, like those bars don't really like represent much.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I've heard.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like when it comes to user personas, think about the most important thing is the goal of the user, her current experience, and the problem she is trying to solve, right? I think those 3 things are the most important things. And I feel like you should basically highlight those 3 things.
Okay.
And I mean, I personally feel like, for example, like age, pronouns, they might be important, but it doesn't really matter that much, especially for this project.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and you have this. So the other suggestion on this is I noticed that like all the UIs are pretty small. So like, for example, in order to see the detail of this UI, I need to like enlarge it to see the details. And I feel like this is something, maybe you can make this UI like a little bit bigger.
Okay.
And style guide is good. User testing interviews. Actually, I really like about this. I think like I have some portfolio, they didn't really include this. And I think this is something it's really great to have. So basically show the changes and tell me, hey, this is the before, this is the after, what kind of change I have made. So I feel like this is super important. And I like how you have add this thing. And I also like about how you like highlight the part that you have made change, which is great. One thing about this is I will label this. For example, this is 1, this is 2, because right now I'm like, which one is 1, which one is 2? It's like, I will figure out eventually, but it will take me some time to map the text with the UI.
Okay.
Similar to this. Okay, limitations going forward. So for this interactive prototype, I personally will suggest you do like a GIF or like a video. Again, it's like, I don't know how many people will actually have the time to like go through all the prototype using Figma. I mean, it's good to have, but I think it will be nice if there has like a video or like a GIF, that's something that won't make me to make too much works basically. And I can still see all the animation, like all the details of the interaction.
Okay.
So about this, I think you mentioned a little bit, but I feel like reflection and lessons learned and challenges is actually something pretty important. So I feel like you can add more to these sections. So for example, like how you collaborate with other team members, how do you deal with conflict? Is there anything on design that you have learned from this projects that you will be apply again in your future projects? So I feel like you can definitely like put more stuff under these sections.
Okay.
I mean, in general, I feel like this is definitely something I also give you an interview. It has like everything. It's just like definitely need some like visual design work, like add more content. But I feel like from like the entire design process perspective, it has everything and it's pretty clear. So yeah, that's my feedback. Any other questions on this?
Yeah, you said like added more visuals, but like this is pretty much like the design work. Like,
so by visual, it doesn't mean the visual to your projects, actually means the visual for your storytelling. So for example, here, is there like a way you can change this old text paragraph into something that has more color? For example, I might well do some tricks on the 1, 2, 3 numbers, make it more interesting, add some color to it, change the font. So yeah, I think, as I said, like treat your portfolio as one of the UX projects, because I feel like you won't show this like on your UX project, right? You will be like, oh, this is like lo-fi.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think if you think about that way, you will be like, oh, I definitely need some color on this part and less text. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, let's move to the next volunteer. Austin?
Yeah.
Is there anything particular that you want me to go over?
I don't think so. I was just kind of hoping to get like feedback on the overall like website.
Okay, sounds good. So first of all, I really like your website. It's super cool. this is definitely something will make you stand out from other portfolio. Like I think it's also because me come from like a front-end development background. Like I am definitely enjoy something like this. Like I will actually spend some time to playing around with this design. So I think this is really cool. And I really like it. So, and I also like about how you like doing those detailed animation things when I hover on the projects. Is this like, did you code the whole website by yourself?
No, I used Webflow.
Okay. So I think this is really cool. And when I click into this project, I noticed one thing is you do have like the overview, you have the project type, you have those content, but I feel like it would be helpful to include a little bit about your role. Is there any other people work on this project? And also when I keep scrolling, I feel like it definitely missed some process. So, I mean, I can see the UI is really cool, but I want to learn more about, for example, how you actually came up with the entire UI, what is this project, and how do you actually came up with the UX flow, like the interaction details. So I feel like this is something you do want to add to your portfolio.
Okay.
So is your role like interaction designer, like UX designer for this project?
This was just like a startup a few people and I were working on.
Okay.
So I was just in charge of like designing like mock-ups and just like different design rules.
Okay. So I think besides adding the details on your UX design process, the other thing you can add is about your startup experience. I feel like that's something definitely is something unique and something interesting to tell. Like for example, if I am like an interviewer, I am like a hiring manager. When I saw you actually have like a hands-on experience with startup, I really want to learn more. For example, how do you collaborate with PM engineers? How do you make design decisions? Do you report to the CEO? Like how do you what's the timeline of the projects? So those details you can also include in your portfolio. The other thing is about the reflection. Have you learned anything from your startup experience? Is there anything you want to like improve on your projects? Anything you will apply to your next projects, things like that. I think this project definitely be like a really great portfolio piece. But I think right now it's definitely need more content.
Okay.
Is this something that has already been launched?
No, we're just still developing it. Like we started development like a couple weeks ago.
I see. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So if you actually have like a functional product or something that have already been implemented, that's also something you could include in your portfolio. Because that's something like, it's definitely one of the big impact you want to showcase, like, oh, I actually designed something that have been actually launched. So yeah, I think that's all my feedback. Any other questions?
I don't really think I have anything else. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
We still have like about 15 or 10 minutes. Do we want to accept other portfolio reviews so far?
Yeah, Yvette. I don't know if you are able to stay for the like up to 7, but yeah, no worries. If not, we can always like do portfolio reviews in our feedback session. It's kind of up to you, I guess, what I guess,
oh,
to do.
Yeah.
I can stay a little bit longer. So
Okay. In that case, maybe we can take another volunteer for a portfolio review. I think we had one earlier in the chat.
Yeah, I think Sana and Jonathan volunteered in the chat.
Yeah, Sana, I think you asked first. So maybe if you want to put your link into the chat, then we can go ahead and have Yvette go over your portfolio and give feedback.
Yeah, give me 1 second. There you go.
okay, let me share my screen. It's always taking me a while to share the screen because I'm using like Google Meet a lot, and it's like I haven't used Zoom for a while.
Okay. Take your time.
This one, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay. So yeah, I like this. I mean, the illustration is super cool. I think this is definitely shows you at least your visual design skill, and I'm not really sure about your background. But can you tell me a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so I'm going into like product design. I'm really like I really like visual design, but I also like research as well. I'd say I'm more visually inclined for sure. And I would say like I'm definitely trying to get into product design though. So I'm trying to like use both research and visuals. Yeah.
Okay. Is there like a particular project you want me to go over?
Yeah, just go over like the first one. It's
Okay.
basically, it's like an AR app. Basically, it's a gamified AR app. I know that I need to like cut down on text and probably put my device screens at the top because I've gotten that feedback before. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So the first thing that I noticed is the color contrast of those duration, team, tools, and deliverables. I feel like to me, like the contrast is a little bit.
Yeah, I know I need to change that. I'm still like working on changing it.
Okay.
But yeah, I know I need to change that for sure.
And the other thing is about the description. I feel like you can give more introduction about this AI app instead of just AI app case study. Like actually tell me what is this AI app, what is for, like a basically make it into like a 1 sentences introduction. So that I don't have to scroll, then I can know, okay, this is like a AI app. I don't know, like for gaming or whatever, like I'm just like making an example. But yeah, I think that will like this section is actually pretty important because a lot of people will click it and read the 1 sentence introduction and decide if they want to stay on this page or not. So that's why I feel like you should put more content over here. Great. Next, project details, okay, and background. Let me click on this first. Okay. So here, instead of like put this link, I will actually add more UIs over here, or maybe like a banner image or something.
What about like a GIF? Would you add a GIF maybe?
Yes, a GIF would be great. The reason is like, again, it's like the place where you can grab your audience attention. You're like, oh, I want to keep reading instead of like, I want to go back to the homepage and pick another project. So I feel like something more visual here will be really helpful, especially the background and the problem have like a lot of work. And here again, like the problem statement, like if it's me, I would just highlight these sentences. Basically, this is the problem statement, how I encourage working through AR gamification. Because to be honest, I won't really read this paragraph.
Okay.
And I would be like about this problem statement, I would be like, why you want to encourage walking, right? Like you might want to like try to reframe it a little bit. Right. So okay, goes. This was my design journey. Okay, market research, interviews. So I like how you actually use the bullet point to basically highlight the two insights. So I think that's really helped me to basically get those two insights really quickly. So the next one, competitive analysis. Okay. So I would like a summary here, to be honest. Like one sentence is summary, be like, here are the insights that I found from competitive analysis. Like for example, most of the apps have this feature, and I also found out two of the app doesn't really have this feature. This is why I'm making the following design decision, something like that. So basically give me a summary of this graph, because to me, I won't spend time actually go through every columns and came up with like a summary myself.
Would you say just like maybe putting a graphic there that summarizes it would be a good idea?
I think it's fine for you to put this data table, but I definitely want like a sentences after this, maybe it's like in a different color or like in bold to highlight, oh, here's the summary of my competitive analysis. Okay. So again, I think the same thing here is like, I feel like the UI is a little bit small. And I know you can click to it, but I still feel like it will be better if you can make it a little bit larger in this page. So I don't need to like jump to another page, then go back.
Okay.
And also I feel like instead of only say home screen 1, collection, build 2, maybe give a little bit details about what each screen is doing right now.
Okay.
That's the same persona. Like again, I feel like you could like summarize this persona a little bit, remove some content, and make it more easier to read.
Okay.
So I really like about this, like the GIF. This is definitely something really helped me to understand how does the design solution works, and your prototype skills, and also your entire product design skill. So I really like this, but the only problem is this is too small. Like I can't really see the detail unless like I enlarge it. And I feel like this one is actually pretty cool, the whole animations. If it's me, I will make it pretty big to showcase this.
Okay.
Okay. And you also have a lot about your reflection and next step, which is great. The only thing I feel like is a little bit missing from here is the iteration part. So for example, how do you actually, what kind of like design decision you made from lo-fi to hi-fi? I know you probably have made a lot of design decisions, like you made a lot of improvements. You don't have to show all of them, but maybe you can pick 3 to 5 of them and explain them in detail. For example, I made this change. I moved this button because of this data from the research, or this feedback from my usability testing. So basically show and before and after, and explain what's the reason, like, is there like any reason why you make the change? Where, like, how do you make those design decisions? The reason is, when you're a product designer, if like a lot of time, it's not really about how your design solution works. It's about how you actually, like why you made those design decisions, because you always need to explain to stakeholders and other leaders, be like, oh, I made this decision because of those reasons. So I think that's definitely one of the things we're like interviewers are looking at while they go through your portfolio.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's all my feedback. If like,
yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you, Yvette, for giving the feedbacks and walking through the websites. Do you have, I don't think we have the time for another one because it's already 6:50 something. If you have any other questions, you can leave a comment or ask Yvette, but I don't think we can do another portfolio review like right now, but you can always go to our feedback session after this.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Yvette. Yeah, and if you want to drop like your contact for any, like, or your LinkedIn or something like that for people, if you feel comfortable, obviously doing so, then you can in the chat. Okay, yeah. So if you guys want, you can go ahead and yeah, email Yvette if you have your portfolio you still want to look over. We are going to hold our open feedback session. So if you guys want to stay for that, then you guys can feel free to do that and get like peer critique kind of in smaller group settings. So if you feel comfortable, go ahead and stay, and then we'll kind of go from there and do feedback. But thank you so much, Yvette. It was very helpful for your presentations and all of your live critique.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Thanks, it was super helpful.